Welcome to Poems You Need, where two poets who believe in the transformative power of language share the poems they need in hopes of helping you find the poems you need too.
Hi, I'm Kelli Russell Agodon.
And I'm Melissa Studdard.
And today we're reading two poems from Ruben Quesada from his chapbook, Revelations. And I'm going to start with the first poem, which is an ekphrastic poem written after this artwork by Joseph Mallard, William Turner. And this artwork was originally shown at the Tate and is now on loan in Japan. And I chose Ruben's poem for two reasons. One, it's an ekphrastic poem, and I always admire poets who write an ekphrastic poem, but don't just describe the painting, but who take it even beyond the painting. And the second reason I chose this poem is a personal reason, is I'm writing poems about angels right now. So again, when I read a good angel poem, I really check in. And as you look at this artwork, I want you to just kind of think about how you feel. And I'm going to share a little bit about how I felt when I saw it, which was I thought it was a positive painting. It wasn't until later when I read more of the art critics' responses about Turner's work is that it's a pessimistic painting. The angel you see holding what I thought was more of a conductor's wand, perhaps doing some sort of symphony, is actually the angel Michael, and that is a flaming sword. And there is Adam and Eve in the lower part grieving over their son Abel. But I saw this painting with kind of my heart and soul, and I saw the light and I saw the beauty in it. So I missed that when I saw it. So here's Ruben's poem in response to it, and it's called Angels in the Sun after Turner. I would have waited alone 1,000 years for the coming of angels, blinding bright as the spring sun to arrive, to abandon this world for another, stunned by their flashing lights aflame across the bow of their spacecraft, landing lights for that world. Herds of animals, horses, humans, and fish fixed. The angels approached. Come, angels, come, beasts. Men and women cried out to each other. The angels cried. Some were lost between their earthly life and paradise. And what is paradise anyway? Few imagined being bound to this world. Blue halo of emerald mountains, extraordinary, ordinary, they rose, a crucifixion yardarm, flying away.
What a poem. I mean, this poem really had me with, just to begin with, the idea that angels might arrive in spaceships instead of just flying in on their own wings. I mean, of all the ways I've ever pictured angels coming to Earth, it wasn't that. Like,
Right.
what an imagination. I love it. Yeah, and it's just, the questions that he asks, like, what is paradise anyway? I like this idea that the poet doesn't have to answer questions, but can pose them and make us really contemplate things.
Yeah. Well, and I read it. It's funny that you bring up the spacecraft. I read it as bow of their spacecraft, I think, because I was thinking wands, but it's bow of their spacecrafts. But I love that it can be interpreted both ways, especially when you're looking at this artwork.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that really enchants me about Ruben's work. I feel like even when he's using words that I already know, I feel like I have to look them up because he squeezes so much juice out of them. It's like, when you're looking in the dictionary and there's like 4 definitions of something, he's using all of those definitions somehow with one word. And, I feel like I really need to look at all of that to know what he's talking about, which is wonderful. So the poem that I'm going to read is called 13, and it's also from the same chapbook, Revelations. And I wanted to say that, this chapbook is arranged in a really interesting way, which is that it's got numbered poems, and then it also has poems that are by title, and then it also has translations that Ruben has done. And so it's really interesting because these numbered poems I read as individual poems, but I could see how someone else might read it as one long poem, in sections with these other poems interspersed. So very interesting. And the poem that I chose is because, I think for me, the kind of poetry that I love the most, when it's at its best, it's functioning in this sort of surreal logic that is more like the way our dreaming mind works than the way our waking mind works. And he just does it so beautifully. And I think of like when I'm dreaming and, my mom is also my next door neighbor, is also my third grade teacher. And it's all the same person. In real life, it doesn't make any sense, but in your dream, it totally makes sense. And that's kind of how these poems feel, like how, at one angle, it's your mother, at one angle, it's someone else. And the poem, like when I look at this poem, 13, at one angle, it's about writing a poem. At another angle, it's about sewing, which is like the main metaphor. At another angle, it is about a sexual encounter. And I kind of feel like maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't know, I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, oh, and it's also about this, and I like that. I like that I don't fully understand everything about it yet. I feel like it's just going to keep giving. So I will go ahead and read it. 13. Even the province of truth must be stitched. You must start with a pattern in a bar years ago, a needle and thread to sew the empty sleeves of a sentence on a Sunday night. Our history is predicated upon subject and verb, a hole in the hull of a hemistick. We found a dark corner to name the feeling that slowly sweeps through the body. It babbles and burrows in the veins as it charges the heart. The smell of our bronzed skin in my mouth, the silken road of my spine against the wall. Stitch the braided memory of prepositions and interjections. Remember to piece buttons onto the cuff. Press an adverbial crest over the breast in frenzied fringe for flair, your face in blue. Neon no longer is a hanger for shoulders to lean upon. A curled collar forms a question. Finish with an explanation. What is your name?
Wow. I love that poem. It's sensual. It's like what you said. It's like the poem that keeps on giving. And when you first read the title 13, I immediately thought of 13 ways of looking at a blackbird. And then I thought of like 13 ways of looking at this poem, a poem about sewing, a poem about grammar. The empty sleeve of a sentence was just like a remarkable moment. And I've heard this poem before and I've read it before, but I feel like it just kept having different layers. And I loved, the idea about like sewing, sex. It's so many things. And also what you said in the beginning, like 5 years later, oh, maybe this poem is about, but we were never lost in the poem because it's so grounded in the beautiful imagery and the moments and the writing and the silken robe. So Ruben just does such a good job with it.
I mean, I really love what you said about 13 ways of looking at a poem. And if you look at the first line, like and a half of the poem, it actually sets that up almost like a thesis sentence. It's like, even in the province of truth, even the province of truth must be stitched. And this idea that truth itself has so many facets that we have to sort of construct it or pin it down, you know.
Down, he stitched together a great poem.
I love that metaphor. I love what you said too about the line that you pointed out about the empty sleeve of a sentence. It's like the poem is embodied. You know, the poem, it's wearing a shirt. It's the only poem I know that's wearing a shirt.
Right. Well, now I'm going to think about that's another thing I love about poems. When an image hits you, is I'm going to see an empty sleeve of a sentence. And when I see an empty sleeve, there's my sentence.
I love that.
Thank you for celebrating poetry with us today. Information about the poet and works featured can be found on the episode page. And if you enjoyed today's reading, please press the like button and subscribe so not to miss another poem. You can also share the episode with a friend, and we hope you do. Until next time, we wish you beauty, inspiration, and very meaningful days. May you always have the poems you need.